As some of you might already know, I used to play Neeko all the time in like 2020, 2021. She used to be my favorite champ. I loved her. I got the Challenger on Season 10 and Season 11 with her. And then I kind of stopped playing, but afterwards, I think Season 12, they reworked her. And I think Neeko's been much, much worse in every single possible way. So I want to give you some insight into why I think that. To me, every ability used to flow like very well with each other. She was kind of like the Mona Lisa of our time, unironically. It's like everything was made to cover another weakness of the other ability. And that's what it felt like the designer was telling me when I was like studying this champ on the LoL wiki, reading the abilities. But then they reworked it and it feels like those kind of like foundations that the designer put in place, they were just thrown out because the people reworking it didn't really understand the foundations. So let's go over the abilities. Okay, so first of all, your ultimate deals less damage. It lost 10% AP ratio, and then it also lost 50, I think it's like 50, 75, 100 damage, depending on the rank of your ultimate. But all in all, it's a huge amount that you're missing, especially if you're going the AP heavy Neeko, kind of like the nuke Neeko, which is what I used to play. You lose a lot of damage from this nerf. Okay, so one of the main things people argue about Neeko is her R, how it gives you the knockup now. People say this completely fixes the champ because now it's guaranteed, you know, quote unquote. But the thing is, you didn't need this at all. So for the people that don't know, Neeko used to not have this knockup right here. She used to just have the shield. And so she would still self-stun herself right there. And like right here, self-stun, self-stun. And so people would like flash while you are self-stunned. And so your ultimate a lot of times wouldn't land. But the thing is, there was a very easy fix for this, and I tried to be outspoken about this, but obviously I'm a small Yugi tuber, so like, you know, not many people saw my videos, right? But the way to fix this is to press E flash, or just E, in the middle of your R, right before it lands. So instead of, like right now, you see how this knockup like CCs them before the stun? So instead of that knockup, you would have your E like this, and your E would CC them right before your ult lands. So it's like, it's the exact same thing. You know, like when I'm playing Neeko right now, I'm not thankful that this, you know, I'm not thankful that this knockup is here, because I used to do the exact same thing by just like Eing. And by the way, back then it was best to E them in the middle of your R, so right there in the middle. Otherwise they would like flash before or after. But anyways, for a player that used this technique of pressing E before your R pops, I don't need this knockup that they gave her with the rework. This knockup is actually very like useless. And like I lost my damage and I lost the shield to get a preemptive CC that I already had. And one thing, by the way, one thing is like your E also does damage, by the way, like it's not a no damage ability, you know, so. And I know I said that like back then it was best to E in the middle of it, because if you E at the end, they would flash away anyways. But sometimes you would also E at the very, very start. So you would like instantly E. So you had that flexibility of Eing either at the start or at the middle. But you can no longer do this, you know, because I mean you can with the current knockup. But one of the problems with the ult is that when they reworked her, they moved some of her stun CC timer to the knockup CC timer. So in other words, right now if I use the RE combo, it will CC them for less time. I think it's like, I don't know if it's 0.5 or 0.75, but it stuns them for less time than it used to prior to the rework. So nowadays you get punished for doing the R into E combo instead of being rewarded. You also lost the shield that you used to get from her ultimate. You no longer get it. And there's a lot of matchups, both in mid and top, that were like fighter or assassin matchups that used to be very, very playable. I'd say it slightly favored the other guy once they hit 6, but Neeko could survive them and Neeko could win them a lot of times because of that shield. You could catch a lot of spells, for example, Fizz ultimate or Yone ultimate. Especially I remember Fizz, like if Fizz ults you right here, you wouldn't like ult instantly for the shield. You would wait until the shark is about to pop, and then you would ult at the last time. And then Fizz wasn't able to all in you because the shield would absorb some of the damage, and then he'd be scared to get stunned as well. But now you don't have that shield at all, so it's like it's not really a defensive ability anymore. Not only that, but if you're ever in the side lane, which Neeko used to be able to side lane very well before the rework, now if you're getting all in by a fighter and an assassin, I mean it's the same thing, but it's like you can't really use this defensively. It's just really bad. There's still a lot of fights or skirmishes that you ended up living with low amounts of HP just because you had the huge shield when you went in. But nowadays, if you notice, the most common Neeko pattern, if you look at pro play or honestly any play, but it's kind of funny seeing it in pro play like LCS or LCK or any of those professional games. Whenever you see Neeko all in, like she'll go in, you know, she'll go in like 1v5 like this, and then like she'll do almost no damage to everyone, and then she'll die instantly right after. That is the most common expected thing in pro play. So it went from being like a damage champion to being like a setup no damage champion that doesn't survive and instantly dies as soon as she goes in, you know? Like go watch pro games right now and watch Neeko go into like a group of people and don't laugh when she dies like 9 out of 10 games. Like as soon as she goes in, she does no damage and then she dies instantly. But that's not how it used to be. That's what the shield was for. It gave you a huge shield, likely because they tested it initially without the shield and they were like, oh shit, Neeko just dies right after. So they gave her the shield. They're like, okay, now she can actually go in and not always die. Okay, so second is her W. This is probably the biggest like discrepancy between Neeko players. It used to be like how well they use their W to juke, and I made a whole video and a whole montage on that, so if you guys want to check that out, check the description. I made a couple of montages actually, but when you used to press W and it hit a wall, it used to just run along the wall. But as you can see there, like if your clone hits a wall now, it just stops moving. So like your opponent will immediately know if you're trying to juke and you send the clone to a wall, which I mean it wouldn't be like that, but basically like you used to strategically send the clone to a wall because the clone just kept moving like this, right? But now it just stops moving. So now if you're trying to juke, the enemy will immediately know like, oh, that thing just stopped moving, so that's the clone. Right? And I guess you could be like, oh well, what if you just send the clone here and you stop moving like this? Yeah, I guess you could do that, but the problem is you might be low HP and the opponent might be like right here, so you're trying to juke to get away. But like he might just wait at your clone position or at this position, right? Because he'll be like, oh well, if it's the clone it'll disappear, if it's him I'll kill him, right? So in other words, you can't really juke anymore because your clone like hits a wall and it's GG. They know who the real Neeko is, and you can't really like reliably, you know, so people will be like, oh, just like make it move again by pressing W, but it's like you can't reliably, like it's really hard because I don't think it's really hard, it's just not doable because I can send my clone to the wall by doing this, but if you keep pressing W here, your clone moves. You see how my clone moves? Because initially it goes to the wall, but then if I press again, it'll repath. So I'm Wing at the same spot, but it's not hitting the wall, right? I want it to just hit the wall and then redirect. But there's, you know, even if you're like faker, like there's that little bit of delay that automatically, you know, like there's gonna be that little bit of delay. And maybe you think this spot is useless. I mean, this spot is kind of useless, but there's a lot of spots like here where you used to be able to run along the wall, or maybe like this. Actually, maybe here. I don't know. But there used to be a lot of useful spots where you'd run like this, and your clone would keep going. And you'd keep going this way. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe like this or something. Just trust me on this. Okay, I played in Challenger games versus pro players versus everything. There used to be a lot of spots, but now you like it reveals you basically. Another thing with her W is, and I haven't figured this one out because haven't played her that much honestly after the rework. I kind of hate myself every time I I play Neeko now. So I get very angry, so I'd rather not play it. I've played like 30 games or something, or maybe 40 in the last 2 years of Neeko. So I haven't figured this one out, but sometimes your clone just stops moving, like right here. Like you'll be, you know, it'll be like in between minions or while you're taking damage or something like this. Like you get ganked, right? And see, I want to juke when I get ganked, so I'll go like this to try and escape the gank. Let's make it more clear. So the bad guys are over there. I'm getting ganked. So I go like this, but your clone doesn't always keep moving. Nowadays, sometimes your clone just like stops right there. And it'll just legit stop for no reason. And then you'll, you know, like, so they'll know that that's the clone. I don't know if it's because I double tap W early, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with taking damage or minions being there. If I play Neeko, I can maybe figure this one out, but I just haven't played it all that much. But I've heard some other players say this happens to them too, like, and it just feels really, really bad. Like, your clone should always keep moving, basically. It shouldn't just like randomly stop. So these two clone problems make it like, it makes your jukes very unreliable, you know. Basically, every time you're trying to juke now, you're like flipping a coin to see if your clone works properly or if it hits a wall. And when you're trying to escape too, you're like, ah shit, I gotta send it in a way where it avoids a wall, because if it hits a wall, so now you're trying to play like dodge the wall simulator with your W, and then you're also praying that it doesn't stop moving at the start. And so for these reasons, like, you know, with the ults no longer giving you the shield, your W not working at all, being very useless, you can no longer sidelane with Neeko, because now you die almost always. I mean, you can't sidelane, but like you die a lot more side lanes and in ganks. Like, you know, if before you used to survive, you know, maybe you survived like 80 to 90% of the time, I'd say is what your survival rate was. Now it's like 50% of the time or 40% of the time. Yeah, so for me, I feel like I went from like 90% survival rate to like 40% survival rate. Okay, so that was the W. And another thing is, because she got this Knockup here on the R, pro players started playing her a lot, because they actually don't care if your ultimate deals 0 damage or that they die right after using it, like paper. They just care about the setup. But for players that played like Mage or Nuke Neeko like me, like, we do care that our ultimate does 0 damage in solo queue and that we die right after using it. But basically, because she got used a lot more in pro play, then she started losing other things. You know, it was like counter compensation basically. It's like, oh hey, you got the setup, now we're gonna take away a couple things. So basically they made the cooldowns longer on Q, E, and R, and they reduced the damages of Q, E, and R. So now when you're laning, like, the champion is a lot weaker. And they did a couple rounds of nerfs, by the way, because some people be like, oh my god, she was super broken. It's like, they did a couple rounds of nerfs, it wasn't just one. I think they also like increased the radius of Q at one point, which was completely unnecessary, by the way, like, but they, like, you know, so it's these little things that is like, I wish they just hadn't touched the champ at all. They hadn't reworked it at all. Because now that you're like, your laning is a lot worse, your all-ins versus fighters, you know, or your fights versus fighters or assassins are a lot worse. You die almost always. Your side laning is like non-existent. You can't do jukes. Your ultimate deals no damage and you just die instantly. Like, they took something that was perfect and then they just turned it to shit. Just so you could get this tiny little knockup that you didn't need, okay? Because like I said, you could just E right before knockup. So you could like E right there, and you didn't need this knockup. Or you could E like this, you didn't need the knockup. Honestly, that's the TLDR of the whole thing. It's like they put something that wasn't necessary because 99% of the player base did not know that you could E before it R to guarantee it. And so you lost a shield, you lost damage, you lost cooldowns, you lost laning, you lost all lanes versus fighters or assassins, you lost sidelaning, you lost juking. Your clone stops like this when it hits a wall now, instead of keeping, you know, instead of running along it. So yeah. Also, another thing I can't show you here actually is actually I'll go into a custom game for this to show you. Okay, so we're in a custom game right now, just to show you this. Basically, you see this little thing right here. This used to just be Neeko's portrait, I'm pretty sure. So you could, like basically, okay, let me take Lulu's thing. Now I can't click on Lulu again, right? Let me take Blitzcrank thing. Now I can't click on Blitzcrank. So why does this matter at all? It's because a lot of times you want it to refresh the exact same disguise, because say Blitzcrank goes down to a certain HP, or maybe I go down to a certain HP, so maybe this way you could see it. So you see how now my disguise is at half HP? Blitzcrank is at full HP, right? So here I would want to like go out of vision and then refresh my disguise so that I'm at full HP again. But as you can see, like I can't go to Blitzcrank unless I click another disguise first. So like let's try that again, right? Like I want to refresh Blitzcrank, I want to go out of vision and now pretend I'm the real Blitzcrank, so I want to refresh my entire HP. But I can't do that, there's no Blitzcrank to click. So I have to like click another disguise and then I have to click on Blitzcrank. And if you click on this one, it just dispels it. So yeah, you can't refresh disguises anymore because now you have the stupid icon in the middle. And actually, maybe that's the other thing we needed to talk about that I forgot. This minion thing, this becoming a minion thing, it was like funny for like the first 5 seconds of release, okay? But there's a huge problem with this thing. Basically, it's very, very unfair for this to be in the game. It's not really a balanced mechanic, and I don't think it can ever be balanced. Just by default, by like the foundations, the way it works. And the reason, it goes back to Dopa's attention theory, which I don't think I've made a video on it, but one thing you need to understand about League and any game actually, or anything, is that there's a certain amount of attention points we all have. Like if you imagine we have like a resource as humans called attention points, and imagine it's at 100, okay? So we have 100 attention points. Our attention is limited, okay? We can only divide it between things. We can't like use like 200 attention points because we only have 100, okay? So we can only divide our attention, you can say attention span, okay? We can divide our attention span between different things. So when you're CSing, you're like putting a certain amount of attention to look at the minion health and to like coordinate to like hit it at the right time, you know? This is why it's good, like if I'm CSing, it's good for my opponent to use a spell on me, right? Because I'm distracted by CSing, so like it's easier for them to hit me with an ability, right? And it goes the same for like if you're playing in a team and all 5 people are communicating with voice chat, right? A lot of times there's those people that are just like saying a lot of useless information, you know? Sometimes it'll be like your jungler. Okay, imagine if you're in a team scenario, okay? And your jungler is saying like, oh, I'm hitting blue right now, I'm hitting blue. Okay, now I'm hitting Gromp right now, okay? I might path top. I'm pressing the Squire Orb. I'm now starting the Scuttle. Like, you don't have to say all those things, right? You could just say like, I'm gonna look Scuttle after blue buff, you know? And it takes like 1% of the time, and your teammates don't have to hear, you know, the entire thing. Or maybe it's a laner, right? Maybe your laner saying, "Oh, I'm CSing, I'm trading right now, I'm looking for a ward." Maybe they're saying too many things. Okay, this is bad because your other 4 teammates have to listen to this, and then they have to process that information. And obviously, like, when you're playing a team, you can tune things out, right? If your bot lane is talking, for example, your ADC is talking to their support about stuff, you're kind of just, as a mid laner, like 99% of the time, I'm just tuning them out, you know? I'm hearing them, but I'm not really listening to them, you know? But if my jungler is saying a bunch of shit, then I have to like filter out like what is actually useful and what is not useful. So I can't just like tune my jungler out, right? I have to listen to him and like filter and process out the information. So it takes away for some of my attention span for what I'm thinking about. You know, if I'm thinking about like, oh, is the enemy jungler ganking me? Like, do I take a trade here? Is this guy like faking, bluffing? Like, I don't know, right? But it takes away your attention span. The minion thing for Neeko is the exact same thing, okay? The problem with the minion thing is that now all 5 players from the enemy team have to like analyze every single wave, like overly analyze every single wave to be like, oh, like, is this the right amount of minions? Is this double stacked wave? Is Neeko in this double stacked wave? Am I pressing tab constantly just to see if Neeko is in tab and not in the map? Like, so if in normal League of Legends without Neeko you have 100 attention points max, keeping track of Neeko makes you spend like 10 to 15 attention points every single game that she's in it. So it reduces people's attention span resource bar by like 10% or something, or maybe 15 or whatever. Anyways, every champion has mechanics, you know, especially the new ones. Everyone has like their own little like game, you know, like this Skarner used to have his like Scryer things or whatever. A lot of champions have their own mini games, you know, maybe Illaoi Tentacles, but basically the Neeko minion thing is way too much. Okay, it takes away way too many attention points. So because of this, it can never really be a balanced mechanic. And yeah, so I don't want it. I don't want this shit in the game. I hate it. It's not fair. It's not balanced. And yeah, I don't even know what he's in. And honestly, most of the time it doesn't even work. So I don't even know why, like, why it's still in the game. But yeah. So yeah, Neeko used to be this absolutely perfect champ. The designer completely, like, they understood the champ so well, how to cover one weakness with another. It was literally perfect. If you read like the seconds that its E stuns you for and the empowered E and the R, it was literally just perfect. It was the Mona Lisa of our time. Whoever made this was the Da Vinci of our time. And now it's been turned into a complete abomination. Literally the only downside that people used to say was like the R wasn't guaranteed. But like I said, you could always guarantee the R by just Eing in the middle of it. So yeah, I think they should just revert Neeko, release a worldwide tutorial just telling people to E in the middle of your R or E flash in the middle of your R. And yeah, pre-rework Neeko was perfect. Now it's an abomination. I hope they revert this shit, this dog shit champ. It's completely ruined. You can't lane, you can't juke, you can't fight assassins or fighters anymore. You can't do anything, you can't side lane. It's horrible. You can't survive or do damage after pressing R. It's just an abomination. Please revert this dog shit. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.